Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. My name is Reverend Pamela Watt and I welcome you here today. So I have 3 different preaching nightmares that I cycle through as a minister. One is that I dream that I'm stepping up to the pulpit and I realize that I haven't prepared and I have no idea what I'm going to say that day. The second nightmare I have is that I'm stepping up to the pulpit and I realize that I'm still in my pajamas, or worse, and everyone's looking at me waiting for me to say something. The third dream is that I'm stepping up to the pulpit on Sunday morning and I look around and realize that nobody is here, that I'm all alone. Right, here it is. Truth is, I'm not alone. I have here Helen Foss, who is our worship associate today. I am joined by Catherine Seelan and Cyril Everett Castor from Fish Castle, who are providing our music today. We have an AV team here today, led by John Claney and Cinda Crane, Cindy Cohen, Dave Donahue. And so I'm really grateful to have all of this support. And of course, we have all of you joining us at home. And I'm so glad that you get to be here virtually in our sanctuary and holding that space across the area with us. And lucky you get to stay in your pajamas today. That's right, I see you in your Spider-Man pajamas. So today, we're doing things a little bit differently. You are streaming from home. We're going to be doing this for at least through March. We're going to be having some version of online worship, and we'll make updates as we go about how that will continue to look as we navigate this uncertain and very different time that we're in. Also, in addition to worship services, CYRE, our religious education for children and youth, is canceled for today and in the coming weeks, at least up until April. And again, we'll continue to update through your e-newsletter, so be sure to subscribe to that if you aren't already. And I'm not getting... So, families, be sure to subscribe to the CYRE news and notes, and also check the CYRE website for family resource pages. Catherine's going to be sharing different resources to help bring Unitarian Universalism into your home lives during this time. The Age of Reason class is going to meet today on a Zoom platform online, and those families should already have an email from Catherine about how to link to that Zoom page. If you have any questions, contact our Director of Religious Education, Catherine Williamson. We were scheduled to have an organ concert today, but it has been postponed until the fall. David Shalat, one of Delaware's finest organists, was going to be playing our beautiful organ, but instead we'll be having him back in the fall, so stay tuned for that. In addition, our auction has been rescheduled. Instead of being on April 4th, so instead of 4/4, it's now going to be 10/10. So October 10th, mark your calendars for our auction event. In addition to our streaming services here, you can go online to the Church of the Larger Fellowship, which is our Unitarian Universalist congregation that is not, it is our one UU church that is not bricks and mortar. It is a online virtual space that has worship services every Sunday at 8 p.m. that you can watch streaming. They also have a newsletter, pastoral care opportunities, things like that. So go check out the Church of the Larger Fellowship if you're not familiar with it already. And during this disruption with COVID-19, we're exploring ways to continue to build connection even while we're doing this social distancing. And so you have a few opportunities coming your way here at First Unitarian. One is that we're going to create some pop-up small group ministries. So if you have an internet connection and any kind of browser platform at home, we'll be sending out opportunities for you to sign up through Zoom to be part of a small group, just a one-time thing. We'll have different days that you can participate in that, just a way to build connection with one another and also have some of that kind of spiritual time together. In addition, Catherine and I will be sharing Unitarian Universalist resources to help you lean into your faith while you're at home. And instead of doing some binge watching of TV shows or whatever else you might be inclined to do, we'll offer you some alternatives, especially for our families and those who are more isolated. I'll also be creating a pastoral care form for you all to express what your needs are during this time and also what you're able to do during this time. That way we can support one another best we can. I know some folks are particularly struggling, and we recognize that challenges like this virus impact the most vulnerable among us. And so we really want to maintain those connections however we can. So be sure to subscribe to our e-newsletter. Information for that is available online. In the meantime, in March, your pastoral care associate is Nancy Ball, and you can reach her by email at nancyb, as in ball, at firstuuwilm.org. I want to also recognize that a lot of people have provided a lot of leadership over this past week. We are, like I said, in very uncertain territory with this virus, so I'm really grateful to our board, our staff, and our volunteer leadership over the past week. One of the things, a study came out last week that showed that in 2 clusters of this virus, one with 91 people in Singapore and another with 135 people in Tianjin, that at least half of the transmission were by people who were not yet symptomatic. And so it might not feel like Delaware only feel like Delaware has a small number of cases, but we don't know right now how many people are asymptomatic. And so we're taking the best precautions we know how to take by maintaining that social distance and helping people to connect even while we are not personally in the same room together. And I'm really proud of our board and other leaders for being willing to advise me with clarity and decisiveness in choosing to shift to online services, to cancel classes and other events. And they made this difficult decision before state and national leaders were willing to do so. And I'm really grateful that we were ahead of all of that. I also want to especially thank John Claney of our AV team, who had already been planning to help us move towards streaming services to accommodate folks who can't physically make it into our sanctuary each Sunday, and grateful that we were ahead of that curve as well so we could participate in this way this morning. Currently, our office is remaining open, but I ask members to keep their in-person visits to a minimum so that we can do our part to minimize contact with the virus. We'll be taking our cues from the Educational Enrichment Center and the Health Department. If the EEC closes or if the Health Department or other government agencies mandate it, we will close the building and insist that everyone refrain from coming and going unless authorized. More information will be forthcoming as things develop. In the event that we close our building, all staff will continue to be paid their wages. Program and admin staff who can work at home will be offered the option to do so. And now our theme for the month of March is wisdom. And in advance of our March 29th service, I'll be soliciting your answers to a question. You'll see in e-news and on Facebook how to submit your answers. But I want to plant that question now. Here's that question I want you to be thinking about and that I'll be asking your response to. If you could whisper 3 words into the ear of a newborn child, knowing those 3 words would guide that child's life for the next 100 years, what words would you whisper? So be thinking about that question. This week, we're celebrating St. Patrick's Day. String Theory was going to be with us. They were going to bring a 9-piece band and bring us St. Patrick's Day cheer, but we decided together that with much of the band taking precautions to stay at home, we'd invite them back in a post-coronavirus time. In the meantime, I'm super grateful that members of Fish Castle are with us, Catherine Brake-Seelan and Cyril Everett-Castor, who have agreed to step up at the last minute and bring us some music. And so wherever we are, whatever disposition we find ourselves in, whether we are feeling alone today or whether we are fortunate to be around others, know that in this hour, you are held by love, by your faith community, and our world. Let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
The chalice lit among us is a beacon of hope in a world of crisis, a beacon of possibility made manifest in community, a beacon of warmth through our interconnections, a beacon of light illuminating our shared wisdom, a beacon of connection by our being together. Please join me now in singing a brand new hymn. It was just written this week by Tommy Snell, who's the music director of the First Unitarian Church in Rochester, New York. It's Kindred, We Now Meet to Worship, to the tune of Ode to Joy. Join me now in speaking our unison affirmation. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
During this time of meditation, I invite you to get comfortable if you're not already. You might choose to plant your feet on the ground, feel the earth beneath you, the solidness of this earth. And take a deep breath in and breathe out. And keep connecting to your breath as I share this poem, a poem written for this time. It's called Pandemic, and it's written by a Unitarian Universalist minister named Lynn Unger. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of time? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. I invite you to a time of silent meditation. There is power in recalling and saying out loud the names of those who need our care and concern. And so in this moment, when we are connected by virtual space and by our inherent interdependence, I invite you to say out loud the name or names of those who are on your hearts and minds this day. And in the mix of those names spoken and unspoken, we add to all those who are especially vulnerable in this pandemic. People whose risk factors make this virus especially dangerous. People who don't have access to childcare options or are uncertain and maybe even desperate for how to keep their children safe while they go to work. People who are contract workers, hourly employees, small business owners, or others whose incomes are diminished or halted, but whose bills continue to flow in. People who suffer from anxiety or depression, who are struggling with this added stress. Healthcare workers on the front line of contagions, government leaders, school leaders, and others who are in varied states of readiness or unreadiness to protect countless numbers of people during this time. For all those names who are spoken and those unspoken, may they know peace, may they know healing, and may we all know wisdom. I was listening to a podcast of Science Weekly, and social psychologist Roy Baumeister was talking about the presence of a negativity bias in human beings. That is, we are skewed to think about and pay attention to negative ideas and thoughts. For instance, we have way more words for negativity and sadness than we do for positivity and happiness. And from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Things that provoke a negative reaction, like a hungry lion heading this way, need us to have a sense of urgency and pay attention so that we can change something in order to save ourselves from that lion. Whereas things that provoke a positive or happy response really don't need us to do anything different. We don't have anything we need to change. Everything's good. And so we don't feel like we have to linger in that happy place. Instead, we go back on alert, looking for negative things in our environment. And what happens to us now in this day and age is that when we scan the horizon looking for threats, we can find them anywhere. An escalating climate crisis, failed peace negotiations, threats of violent crime or identity theft, a failing economy, and then we have a virus that's making its way through China, through South Korea, Italy, and ultimately here in the United States. Everywhere on the horizon is negativity that causes anxiety and or depression and or trauma. The other day, someone told me that they were praying to God to make this widespread virus disappear. And I had to stop myself from saying the thing I wanted to say, which is God doesn't do that. I've never seen God do that. Governments, healthcare organizations, pharmaceutical companies, maybe. Smart social distancing techniques, diligent hand washing, cleaning of surfaces or other possible places where the virus could be hiding. Increased testing sites. These are the things we need to be doing, not praying to some higher power to intervene on our behalf. But that's the grumpy side of me talking. The truth is, I have my own stories of transformational prayer. There was a time in my life when I was struggling with some health issues, and I went to a nutritionist who said that I had to go 30 days without eating a whole host of different foods. They seemed really random to me. There were things like peaches and onions, coffee, cinnamon, dairy products, potassium sorbate, all these different foods. And during that time, I was attending a conference. And for dinner, they had this buffet of all these different beautiful fresh salads, pasta salads, these multi-grain salads, tossed vegetables, greens. And as I moved through the table of this buffet, every single one of those salads was tossed with one or more of the ingredients that I was not allowed to eat. And so it was that for dinner that night at this conference, I had a plate of dry mixed greens. And oh my gosh, was I feeling sorry for myself. And then someone asked one of the ministers who was at this conference to say a prayer, a blessing, a grace before the meal, which isn't really a thing I do very often in my own life. And so we all paused, and the minister said, "Thank you for this food which nourishes us. We know that not everyone has food this day, and we are grateful that we have the opportunity to eat and be nourished by this food." And I thought, well, shit. I suddenly felt like such an entitled jerk for my quiet grumbling, and suddenly felt grateful for that plate of dry mixed greens. Those greens were fresh. They had a taste. They provided nutrition for my body. There was plenty of them to satisfy my hunger. I realized that this food before me would be enough. Furthermore, it was an incredible gift. I also felt grateful for the lunch that I had earlier in the day, for the breakfast, for plenty of water, all these things that would get me through that evening. We scan the horizon looking for stuff to complain about, things we need to be changing or need to be running from, or things we need to be fighting against. And when the whole world is activated in that direction, it gets really hard to return to gratitude. It gets really hard to return to love and kindness and generosity. Equity and justice go out the window. Every man for himself kicks in. We start to expect rudeness and hurry from one another. Social distancing turns into isolation. We stop trusting one another. Fear becomes the prevalent feeling. We might look out on the horizon and there might be daffodils in bloom and cherry trees, and there might be birds flying out and all these signs of love and goodness and hope all over the place. But if we are scanning the horizon looking for trouble, we are going to see trouble. That is all we're going to see. And when I was focused on my lack and what I was missing, all I could see and experience in that moment was what I was missing. Prayer then becomes this simple practice, not necessarily of asking some higher power to intervene on our behalf, but simply this practice of looking for something good and something healing on the horizon. Something good and healing to which we can connect. But it's more than that. In the years that I was a hospital and hospice chaplain, I prayed a lot. I prayed with words. I prayed for requests from people, with personified deities who had names and faces and personalities. I almost always asked a patient, "Would you like me to say a prayer?" And most often the answer was yes. And I would follow up with the question, is there anything in particular you would like prayers for? And sometimes people could name it really clearly. Yes, will you pray so that I can get rid of these headaches? Or pray so that I could see the beach one more time? Or live to see someone new in the White House? Sometimes a patient had so many requests that they didn't even know where to begin. Sometimes they didn't have the courage to voice their deepest need because saying it out loud forced them to acknowledge what they didn't have, but so much wanted. Sometimes a dying patient would want prayers for more time. I prayed with a woman once who wanted more time so that she could experience the birth of her great-granddaughter. A thin, frail woman with cancer spread throughout her body. I just need 6 more months, she said to me. And while some people do fight extraordinary odds, we were certain that this woman would not live 6 months. We knew she would probably not live 6 weeks. And so I took her hands in mine and we prayed. And as someone once said, we prayed not so that God would know her wish and desires, but so that we might know what was God's wish and desire for her in this time. Dear God, I said, Joan wants so desperately to experience the birth of her first great-grandchild. And we know that she is very sick and that her body is slowing down. And we ask that you give her the strength to be weak. We ask that you give her guidance in how to hand down her legacy, down to her family, even to those future members of her family whom she might not get to meet. Comfort her. Help her to let go of those things that are getting in her way of being present and joyful. Give her your peace so that she might enjoy these final weeks or days or hours with her family. Be with her, and when it is her time, show her the way home in love. Wisdom is not about knowledge. Wisdom is about knowing what to do with the knowledge that you have. And so from this place of clarity, of naming what is good, of listening to the voice of God or some higher power or deeper insight than we in our day-to-day lives embody, we go forth and we listen too for what we are meant to do with this knowledge, how we're being asked to change in this moment. How are we being asked to bring into the world in this moment our Unitarian Universalist principles of justice and equity and peace, believing in one another's worth and dignity, the understanding that your life is tied to my life, and our lives are tied to people whom we don't even know. Because we don't want to be keepers of negativity right now. There's plenty of that out there. We don't want to be keepers of panic right now. There's plenty of people panicking right now. And when we catch someone who is scanning the horizon, seeing nothing but trouble, what could we do with the knowledge that we have that life is more than just the negative or scary parts? How can we use the smarts that we have, the skills that we have, the dispositions we have to help those who are most vulnerable navigate this time? How can we find our way back to wisdom, no matter how chaotic things seem? And find our faith smart, the wisdom of our faith, which is both tested in times such as this, but is also what we practice so that we are ready for times such as this. We have a Unitarian Universalist prayer bead practice that was developed by Reverend Eric Wickstrom, and I've adapted this practice for our time together this morning. Eric Wickstrom's practice includes 4 elements: naming, knowing, listening, and loving. And for each element, Helen and I will simply invite you into some questions to think about each of those areas. Don't try to answer every one of the questions we'll pose, but listen for the question that speaks to you and let your thoughts linger there. Simply listen for what resonates with you. We'll have a period of silence after each element, and then Cyril and Catherine will share a short refrain that you're welcome to sing along with. And we'll also start and end with that responsive song. And so get comfortable in your chair during the reflection. You can close your eyes if you'd like, or soften your gaze.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud.
Naming. What name do you give the sacred and holy as you encounter it? What gives your life purpose and meaning? What feeds your soul? Who or what opens your heart when your heart is closed? For whom or what are you grateful? How does the sacred move through your life and the wider world? Where are the miracles in your life? Maybe it is God or Goddess, Spirit, Creator, nameless mystery. Maybe it is your children or your music or your art. What gives your life purpose? What gives you joy when joy is hard to find? Spend some time now in silence, opening your heart toward your answer to one of those questions.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out loud.
Knowing. Consider your life right now. Without judgment, come into an awareness of a fault or a failing you have, something you need to change. Maybe it's a habit or characteristic or a way of being in the world that you'd be better off without. Have you made a big mistake in your life? Have you gotten off track somewhere? Are you preoccupied or distracted by things that aren't good for you? Where have you failed? What needs to change? Where are your weaknesses? There's no judgment here. You're just noticing. Unless we acknowledge our faults and failings, we can do nothing about overcoming them. Spend some time now becoming fully aware.
When I breathe in,
listening. I invite you to simply listen for the voice of quiet stillness within. Listen for wisdom. Listen for what is all around you, but what you have not yet stopped to hear. Sit in the mystery, gently breathing. There is no need for your mind to be anywhere but right here. Let go of the need to process anything and rest in the silence, listening for wisdom.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out.
Loving. Name or visualize those people who need your awareness today. Family, friends, co-workers, strangers, communities, the world. Simply hold them in your consciousness and care. Call to mind people and situations you know who are in need, or sit quietly and see who or what comes to mind.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out.
2 weeks ago, Reverend Pam asked me to write a couple of paragraphs about wisdom, the March Soul Matters topic. I scoured the wisdom packet, read the blurbs, looked at some of the YouTube video links, and thought about who influenced me, what wisdom left lasting impressions. Looking back, I realize I do indeed consciously live by the golden rule, as simple and profound as that. Further, recognizing I am now in my 8th decade and am expected to be in a position to be a fount of wisdom myself, I reflected and became conscious that I have been acting on a strongly held wisdom that I should not get caught up with anger at situations, particularly political situations today. It is more productive to look for the positive ways around to respond, or focus on the beauty of my life that surrounds me, than getting caught up with the negativity, which is always counterproductive. Further contemplation made me realize how my 51 years of membership at First Unitarian has had a strong impact on my life. I look back and remember the parenting courses Robert and I took when our children were very young. Some of you, I'm sure, remember those Children the Challenge courses based on the work of Rudolph Dreikers and organized by our RE director, Emily Thorne. We learned wisdom and strategies that made a world of difference in our parenting. About the same time, we joined our first U small group, a group that actually met for the next 20 years, often challenging our assumptions about our relationships. That and our couples communication group and First U couples weekend retreats resulted in strengthening our marriage relationship and developing new wisdom. Tack on my new insights from the social justice work we did, the LGBT and racial justice. Add to that my deep dive into really learning about Unitarian Universalism when I chaired our senior minister search committee in 1995. Top that off with the takeaways from Bob Dawes' sermons, from all the time Patrick O'Neill ended up his sermon with something to think about while you're washing the dishes this week. Or now with Reverend Pam's solid, challenging sermons. I love pondering the many ways this church has enriched my life. I invite you to join me and reflect on the ways that you have learned or grown from your association with First Unitarian. What is it about First U that brought you wisdom, and what brings you here with us today? It's time now for our offering, for each of us to contribute to this special place, the means to keep the lights on and support our incredible staff who enable our individual search for meaning and looking for the source for wisdom. Your gifts may be made by mailing a check or through the Give Plus mobile app. If you're using the app, select First Unitarian Church of Wilmington and tap Give Now. Choose the fund toward which you're giving and complete additional steps as prompted. These instructions will appear on the screen in a few moments if you need more time to absorb them. Please join me now, though, in reciting our word of dedication. To the work of this congregation, which is leaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these, our offerings.
is coming, and the leaves are sweetly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? Will you go, lassie, go?
In this pandemic, in this time of heightened fear and anxiety, we might be inclined toward panic, toward a drifting away from our best, most grounded selves. We might be tempted to hoard more supplies than we need or to go at every person for themselves. But all of us have ways in which we are smart. And right now, what our local and global communities need from us is to be faith smart, to embody boldly our principles that remind us that everyone has inherent worth and dignity, that justice and equity are always important, even in a pandemic, that our lives are interdependent and no one goes it alone, especially now. And even when social distancing is critical, no one goes it alone. Do not spend your days looking on the horizon for something to worry about. Stay grounded in your faith. Your faith is designed to get you through times such as this, and your faith is designed to be a lifeboat for others who need it. As Helen extinguishes our chalice, may you be reminded that even in our isolation, we are never alone. There is a glow from here that surrounds you always. Take that light in and find ever newer and more creative ways to bring that light into a world that desperately needs light. We're going to end our time together with hymn number 20, Be Thou My Vision, and I hope you'll sing along with us at home.